My name is John Passfield, and the title of this video will be Eleonora Duse, Video 18, The Reflective Journal. This is my novel, Eleonora Duse, Let Me Have My Wings. But in this video, I'm going to read from the Duse Journal, which can be accessed for free on my website, johnpassfield.ca. The title of the journal is The Making of Eleonora Duse, Let Me Have My Wings. It was written while I was polishing the rough draft of the novel after every word of the completed novel was already in place. The novel is 46,000 words, and the journal is 53,000 words. In this reading, I'm going to present 5 passages from the journal as a sample of what the Duse Journal contains. So here's passage number 1. The idea of writing a novel on the topic of the life and career of Eleonora Duse occurred to me on Thursday, April 23, 2020, almost a year ago to this day. Well, a year ago after I was writing this note. I had just completed my novel, Pauline Johnson, Know Who I Am. So here's that novel. And was polishing the rough draft of that novel when it occurred to me that I would enjoy writing 3 novels on the female artists whose lives I had turned into folk tales in that novel, Pauline Johnson. So the 3 female artists were Eleonora Duse, Sarah Bernhardt, and Anna Pavlova. Now, in June 2020, 2 months after what was an idle thought about writing a Duse novel, I found a mention of a D'Annunzio novel, The Flame, in a Hemingway biography, and was immediately intrigued by the D'Annunzio-Duse dynamic that it presented. So I read a few chapters of The Flame, and that led to a sense that the life and career of Eleonora Duse would make an ideal topic on which to base a John Passfield poetic novel. So that's passage number 1 from the journal. Here's the second passage I chose. At a certain point in my journal writing, it occurred to me that it would make it easier for a future reader to see the logic of the technical terminology that I use in my planning notebooks and journals if I printed a whole chapter of the novel with the headings which I remove when I print the complete rough draft. About these headings, I would say that I write to form, that the form is essentially the same for each novel, that the form that I've devised allows for the flexibility that makes each novel a unique version of the John Passfield poetic novel, of the John Passfield objective correlative, that's a phrase from T.S. Eliot, of the John Passfield personal image pattern, of the John Passfield personal myth. All 3 terms mean the same thing to me. Objective correlative, image pattern, myth. The third passage from the journal. It's interesting that in my notes I mentioned the possibility of a duet-duel between the poet D'Annunzio and the actress La Duse. Now, duet shows harmony, and a duel shows disharmony. So a duet-duel is a technical term. Harmony-disharmony between 2 characters. So the chance to pursue the possibilities of a technical device, duet-duel, can also be a strong incentive to choose a particular topic on which to base a novel. I would trace this technique back to my 13th novel, here it is, Geoffrey Chaucer, Canterbury Bound, in which I wrote some images about which I had the feeling that the main character was sitting in his home in Kent, or above the city walls of London, and being interviewed for a television show. Now, the television terminology doesn't show up in the novel, but the tone, the attitude of mind, well, let me see now, how did I start to become a poet and so on? It was the tone of his thoughts that made me think of these images that way. I've always daydreamed about being a character other than myself who was being interviewed on television, even when I was a boy. Maybe everyone does that. So this was a natural extension of that process, and it turned into a technique in my pursuit of a form for the poetic novel, and has become a standard feature of my later novels. Here's the fourth passage from the journal. I was intrigued by the prospect of a D'Annunzio-Duse duet duel. However, when I started writing images for Duse, I realized that the duet duel would not be between her and D'Annunzio, the young poet, but between her and what might or might not be an interviewer. In an echo of my Pauline Johnson novels, I used that technique earlier. A young reporter interviews an older actress. It's interesting that what seems like a strong incentive for choosing a topic, the D'Annunzio Duse duet duel, can morph into a variation of the original idea and provide a strong image arc in the novel that is eventually written. In this case, the original idea gave way to a better idea. Now, the fifth and last passage that I've chosen from the journal. Another strong appeal of the life and career of Eleonora Duse was that she is an actress who spends her life creating the great roles of the dramatic repertoire. This too promised a feast of potential imagery. I was already familiar with all of the classical roles that are mentioned in the biographies, as I taught some of them, had studied them as examples of the poetic drama, and had viewed many of them as films and in live theater. So, I knew how rich these roles would be as deepening imagery, which would help me to image the thoughts of the main character in her attempt to understand and evaluate her life. In her roles as a child in a family, a lover in a number of male-female relationships, a mother, a public performer, and a subject of public commentary. We all struggle to live our lives as best we can. We all have the opportunity to explore the information of our lives as potentially interpretive imagery. We all respond to that opportunity in our own ways. To have ready-to-hand imagery in the form of the roles that the main character plays was a great incentive to make the life and career of La Duse a topic for a John Passfield novel. But many other topics would have served as well, have served in the past, and will serve in future novels. So those are the 5 passages that I chose from the journal, just to give a sampling of the kind of writing that I do in those journals. Here's a note that I wrote for this video presentation. When I was showing people, both acquaintances and publishers, my early novels, I met resistance. Most did not comment, but those who did, whether publishers or friends, offered the same advice. It was advice that urged me to write a novel that was like all the other novels that were being published, reviewed, read, and enjoyed. It was the form of the prose novel of our time. One publisher suggested that I read some of their novels, and then I would know what kind of novels they were willing to publish. I saw myself wearing the livery of a duke or a lord, or at least, in contemporary terms, the livery of the owner of a racehorse. I was being invited to groom myself to be a member of a publishing stable. So, I told myself to bear down on the journals that I had started to write as a response to my first novels. If I knew that I didn't want to write novels like all the other novelists of my time, and didn't want to write novels that publishers wanted to publish, I should be able to articulate why I thought myself to be right about my own kind of novel, the form of the novel which I was engaged in developing, by writing clearly and concisely and thoughtfully about why I thought this novel form to be would be superior to the kind of novel which was so entrenched as a preferred novel of my time. What was lacking in the prose novel? What was desired in the poetic novel? And what changes should I make to my current novel form to bring the form that I was developing into line with a form which would do what my developing novel form could not yet do. At present, I have written 29 novels and 2 novellas for a total of 31 creative books. Soon, I will have written 31 planning notebooks and 31 reflective journals, all in a quest to convince myself, to prove to myself that I know what I'm doing when I write my creative books, no matter what anyone else might say. I'm sure that the notebooks and the journals have helped me to avoid the despair that threatens any novelist who has no publisher and no readers, as was true for me for a long time, and yet still feels the need to persist in what no one else seems to see as a worthy cause. I am grateful to my publisher, David Stover of Rocks Mills Press, for trusting me when I said that I knew what I was doing and that what would be the drawback for readers in the short run would be the attraction for readers in the long run. The presentation of a completely new shape of flexible, adaptable image pattern for the art form of the poetic novel. Well, lastly, I'll just say thank you. I've already mentioned that you can access the journal for free. Just go to johnpassfield.ca, which is my website, and click on the icon for this particular novel, and it'll pop up onto your screen. And then lastly, I'll just say thank you for watching this video.